Hey there, I'm David. He's read the training material. This is What the Print. Today I'm going to walk you through the painting process of painting this little guy. I did all of it, recorded at least 90% of it, a little bit cut out. So let's jump into that.
I used a special plastic primer here. This one sticks to plastic really well and helps to finish the model a lot cleaner. Make sure to shake it before you use it and apply a thin, even coat across the entire model. You don't want to leave any patches blank, and you don't want to apply too much. If you apply too much, it'll get a bit clumpy, and although you can sand it down, you'd rather not waste that extra primer. You want it to be even because we are going to sand this down, and you want the paint to be able to get into every little nook and cranny. So make sure to spray from every angle and get a fine coverage on the entire model. The reason I use masking tape is so that I can hang it out to dry like this. This allows me to hang it upside down from a bar, or in this case the arm of a chair. Leave it out in the sun for a couple of hours until it no longer feels damp or sticky to the feel. Now it's time to sand the model down. I use a 180 grit sandpaper and quite roughly go over the entire model. I basically want to get as much of the layer lines out as possible, at least the ones that are very visible. After the first round of sanding, I primed the model again. Now I can bring it in, sand it down again, and prepare it for its first layer of paint. This allows me to get the model as smooth as possible before we put on some paint. There'll still be some layer lines, but I'm quite happy with this result already. The main areas of focus here for me are the hair on the top and the chest and back. I basically want those areas to be as smooth as I can get them with minimal effort. I don't want to spend too long on this model, but at the same time I want the important areas to look nice and smooth. The face should of course also be pretty smooth, but the lighter colors are more forgiving when it comes down to it. The blue that I have is a little bit too dark, and wanted more of a pastel blue for the Vault Boys overall. So I down mixed it with a little bit of white, making it slightly lighter. This color worked out very well in the end. I applied it quite smoothly over the entire overall area, making sure to not be too careful and get a very even coat for the first coat. Anything that goes wrong here, you can always patch it up in the second coat, and of course we're going to apply finishing touches and extra layers of paint anyway, so don't be too afraid of making mistakes here. Similarly, I did the same mix for the yellow. The yellow on Vault Boy, again, it's very pastel shade, and I wanted his hair to fit the actual image. So I down mixed the yellow that I have, which is quite a bright yellow, with white. Applied quite a thick, even coat of yellow across the hair, trying to get it so that I don't have to do too many coats of this, and I didn't spend quite enough time sanding down some areas, so I wanted to make sure that the coat was quite thick so it could fill in the gaps. course Vault Boy has quite a nice wide white smile. So I thought, before I do his face, let me cover the teeth and at least lay a base coat. This will allow me to revisit it later on, but at the same time I can give him a flashy white smile already. I used a bit of black for the eyes and for the base. I decided that the base should be a very neutral color, so as not to detract from the model at all, but I would rather have it black and fade into the background than have it something a bit more bright like brown, which would blend too much into his shoes. I really wanted it to look like it's just a base and not any special piece of the prop. Now time for some sanding and another layer of paint. I sanded down the blue overalls so that the layer lines fill in even more. This is effectively acting as a darker layer of primer which can be tweaked so that our new layer can go on a lot smoother. Use the same blue paint to paint over another layer of blue and ended up with a much smoother overall. Another layer of yellow on the hair, just to clean it up and make sure to fill in everything that I can see. And finally, a first skin tone layer. I'm going to have to do this a second time later on because you can see some of the darker underlying model shines through, but overall applied 2 layers to the skin just to cover it nicely. After letting it dry again until it's quite tacky to the touch, it's time to paint in the details, finally. So again, I'm actually using exactly the same yellows for the hair that I'm going to be using on the trim on the overall. Paint very carefully along the stripes. There's a little bit of embossing in the model to act as a guide, but be very careful while painting along the stripes. I also did have to clean up occasionally. What I would do is apply a bit of the paint cleaner to my brush, just brush off the edges, and then wipe it down with a towel, hoping that it's dry enough that I can continue and clean up as I go, so as not to take too much time having to clean things up properly at a later time. I also want to avoid repainting things. Unfortunately, at the end of the last clip, my camera's battery died. As you can see here, I've continued and had painted the hands completely and done the shoes in a brown. I'm just going to finish up some touches on the face, make sure to add an extra layer where a little bit of the undercoat is shining through, and just clean up little bits of edges and give an extra coat to the details. You can also see that I've applied an extra layer to the eyes, just so that they don't look as creepy as they did earlier.
So I printed him at 0.2mm layer height, nothing special, no interesting settings, just tree supports, minimum infill area, nothing else. I also used the GiantArm Silver PLA that I used in the first video with the cat. I found this decent PLA to just paint over. I've got some interesting other filaments, but I didn't want to waste them on something I'm going to paint. This took about 6 hours end to end, so not a particularly challenging print either. It succeeded the first time, so no real issues there. The paints used are a brand called Hobbylac. I bought them from a local hobby shop. Basically any acrylic paints will do. I've used a primer called No Limits Plastic Primer. Really like that primer. It sticks to plastic like crazy. It's fantastic. And I bought a nice brush set from Amazon specifically for painting miniatures. I'll leave a link down in the description. Alright, here's the time lapse. Hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was also quite educational. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave some comments down below. I want to hear what you want me to print next. I've got a couple queued up, but I'm also probably going to start making some videos about my work in progress and other projects that I'm working on. Alright, see you next time.